President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent to speak as if in morning business for 5 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today in recognition of Native American Heritage Month. As a senator from Washington State, I'm proud to represent 29 federally recognized tribes. In Washington, we understand the importance of the sovereignty of tribal governments, and anyone who knows me knows I believe a commitment is more than just words, it is about action. At the start of this year, when we passed the American Rescue Plan to get America up and running again, it was the single largest federal investment in tribes ever, more than $32 billion for tribal nations. Since then, I've spoken to many tribal leaders in Washington State about what this has meant for our tribal communities. A housing grant to Muckleshoot Indian Tribe helped provide home for an additional 25 families. The Lummi Nation created new opportunities for education and job retraining. The American Rescue Plan helped the Tulalip keep Tulalip-owned businesses who have been struggling since this pandemic afloat. Action on our commitment has helped tribal members in my home state stay housed, get back to work, keep their small businesses open, and continues to make a difference in 1,000 different ways. Now, these outcomes weren't inevitable. They happened because of intentional and specific policy decisions this Congress made to support tribal nations. So if we're serious about showing a real commitment to tribal communities during Native American Heritage Month, then we need to continue to prioritize tribal communities in all of our policymaking. Infrastructure in Indian country, everything from roads and bridges to broadband, has been underfunded for too long. The bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is now signed into law, will make $13 billion in direct investments in Indian country, with tens of billions more in federal grants and future funding opportunities. This will mean clean drinking water, access to high-speed internet, transit to connect communities, and more. And now we have another opportunity to show our commitment to tribal communities with the Build Back Better Act. Just like everywhere else in this country, childcare is a crisis for Native communities. Right now, about 1 out of every 4 Native Americans in this country is experiencing poverty. That is higher than any other group. So when 1 in 10 Native American parents have to quit or change their job because they can't find or afford childcare, we're making a tough situation worse. My childcare proposal in Build Back Better is going to cut the cost of childcare by thousands for tribal families, with many paying nothing at all for childcare, and it's going to help get more slots open everywhere we need them, so parents won't be stuck on waiting lists for months on end. It is our government duty to make investments like this one in Indian country, because if we really believe in tribal sovereignty and acknowledging the role of our government and what it has played in the centuries of persecution Native peoples in this country have faced, we must also take action to create real opportunity for people. Action on quality, affordable childcare, housing, home care, and more. Build Back Better is going to make a big difference for Native communities, but there's more we need to do to address the specific needs of Native communities. We have to build on President Biden's executive action to address the epidemic of missing or murdered Indigenous peoples, especially to protect Native women and girls. We must reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act and strengthen that legislation to empower tribal nations to hold perpetrators of crimes committed on tribal lands accountable. And living up to our commitments is also about representation and a seat at the table. I was overjoyed to strongly support the confirmation of Deb Haaland, who's already blazing a trail as an historic Secretary of the Interior and a powerful voice for tribal interests. I was proud to recommend Lauren King, a citizen of the Muskogee Nation and a tribal law expert, to serve a lifetime appointment as a federal court judge in Washington State. The first Native American federal judge in my state's history and just the 6th ever in American history. And I'm glad to see more than 50 Native Americans serving in key political positions throughout the Biden administration. I look forward to seeing many more. So, Mr. President, this Native American Heritage Month, let's resolve to build on the important work this Congress has done so far to support our Native communities. As a voice for Washington State tribes in the United States Senate, I will always advocate for Indian country and fight to ensure the federal government lives up to its sacred commitment to Indigenous people across the country. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor. And I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.